Hello and welcome to Insight English Academy. Today's video is going to be on the first chapter from the Alternative English course of HS second year. This video is dedicated to all my HS final year students from the SEBA Board. Assam. Let's begin with the chapter. First of all, I'd like to tell you why is this chapter chosen as the first chapter in your syllabus. It's because this chapter is all about determination, willpower, and faith in oneself. We'll find out the journey of a man who was removed from his office, in which he has been serving for over many years, but then he suddenly removed from his office on the pretext that he is not formally educated to hold the office. And how this man eventually finds out his destiny and where he actually deserves to be in life. The story begins with this Verger and with description of how this man loves his job and what the Verger's gown actually means to him. We have a few terms in this chapter which we need to understand properly and we need to keep in mind while reading this chapter. The first is the word Verger. What exactly is this Verger? Is this the name of the man itself or is this something else? So the word Verger is the name of the office which is in the church, and this office of the Verger is held by this man who is the main character in our story, and the main character in the story is known as the protagonist. So the name of the Verger is Albert Edward Foreman. So what we have now, we have that this story is about a man who holds the office of a verger in a reputed church, and his name is Albert Edward Foreman, and this church is located in a neighborhood which is quite sophisticated. So the name of the man, the name of the verger is Albert Edward Foreman, name of the church is St. Peter's, and name of the locality, the neighborhood in which it is located is Neville Square. So we need to keep these three names in our mind as we read this story. So moving on, we find out that as long as there was the earlier Visar in the church, Visar is another office in the church which is the office of the head priest. And this Visar is in charge of all other offices in the church. So, as long as the earlier Visar was in office, it was easy for the verger, Albert Edward Foreman, to continue with his service because the former Visar was not quite interfering. In the words of the verger, he was not quite interfering, and he was not somebody who would look into every detail of the church. But this new Visar who has replaced the former Visar is quite the opposite. He likes to have a say in every particular thing of the church, and he wants to have his opinion about everything related to the church and the people associated with the church. So in this context, we'll see how this new Visar finds out the fact which actually comes to him as a shock, because he is somebody who is quite particular about everything, and the revelation of the fact that the verger who has been working in this reputed church is not formally educated, is not something that he can take or welcome in a very positive vein. Vein means V-E-I-N, means manner. He cannot welcome this fact quite positively. So what he does, he calls the Verger and he wants to have a talk with him. And in the process of this talk, what he proposes to the Verger is for a condition. He says that if you want to continue serving in our church, you have to go back and learn how to read and write. But the Verger is not somebody who would give in. Give in means succumb to the temptation or succumb to the pressure which he was getting from the Visar. So what he does, in a very dignified and polite manner, he puts this in front of the Visar that he is not a young man who would like to be taught new things now, new tricks. He understands that he is old and not in that state of mind, in that phase in his life where he will be able to learn new things. And that's why what he does is he decides to quit his job. And the moment he says this to the Visar, he doesn't wait there to listen to what the Visar has to say next. All he does is he leaves the church and goes straight to the vestry. The vestry is another important term that we come across in this chapter. It's a room in the church where the clothes and the essentials are, the stuffs which are essential for the church are stored. So the Verger goes straight into the vestry and he keeps his Verger's gown. So the Verger's gown is another important aspect in this story, because the way the Verger treats his gown, that is his official gown, it shows how much he loves his job, how much he respects this Verger's gown. So the moment he removes it from his body, he is moved and he puts it back on the peg. The peg is the place where he can put the gown. He comes back from the church, and on his way back, he was thinking about what happened